I took the motel job because I was running out of places to go. That's the honest version. The version I told people was that I wanted a quiet job. Something simple, a desk, a key rack, a bell that rang when customers walked in, maybe a little cleaning, a little bookkeeping, a little conversation with tired travelers who just needed a bed before getting back on the highway. The truth was less romantic. I was broke, newly single, and living out of a duffel bag in the back seat of my car. I had left Amarillo after a string of bad decisions and was driving west with no real plan when my check engine light came on outside a town that barely existed on the map. That was how I found the Starling Motel. It sat alone off a long stretch of highway in the Texas Panhandle, the kind of road where the land seems too flat and too wide, where the sky takes up more space than it should, and where headlights appear miles away before they ever reach you. The motel sign was impossible to miss. Starling Motel vacancy, color TV, cold AC. The sign buzzed red in the dusk, though half the letters flickered. The S in Starling blinked on and off, making the sign read Tarling for long stretches, which somehow felt more honest. The motel itself was shaped like an L, one story with 12 rooms facing a cracked parking lot. The office sat at the corner under a rusted metal awning. There was an ice machine that looked older than me, a soda machine that hummed too loudly, and a swimming pool out back that had been drained and covered with a sagging blue tarp. Beyond the motel was nothing, just highway, dry grass, old fence posts, power lines, and open land stretching into the dark. My car coughed twice as I pulled in, then died. I sat behind the wheel and stared at the motel office. A yellow "Help Wanted" sign hung in the window. I remember laughing, not because it was funny, because it felt too convenient. I got out, grabbed my jacket, and walked into the office. A bell above the door gave a weak little jingle. The office smelled like dust, burnt coffee, old carpet, and cigarette smoke that had soaked into the walls years ago and never left. There was a front desk with a scratched wooden counter, a key rack behind it, a coffee maker, a small TV bolted high in the corner, and a hallway leading to what I guessed were the owner's living quarters. A man sat behind the desk reading a newspaper. He looked up when I entered. He was somewhere between 60 and 80, in the way old desert men sometimes are, thin as barbed wire, with sun-browned skin, white hair combed flat, and eyes so pale they looked almost silver. He wore a pearl-snap shirt buttoned to the throat and held the newspaper like he had been waiting for me to interrupt him. "You need a room?" he asked. "My car died outside." He glanced through the window. "Bad place for that." "Yeah, I noticed the sign." "What sign?" I pointed to the window. "The Help Wanted sign." He turned slowly and looked at it, like he had forgotten it was there. Then he folded the newspaper. "You looking for work?" "I might be." "You ever run a front desk?" "No." "Clean rooms?" "A little." "Handle cash?" "Yes." "Stay awake all night?" "I can." He studied me for a long moment. "What's your name?" "Evan." "Last name?" I hesitated. I don't know why. Maybe because the office felt like a place where names should be given carefully. "Price," I said. He nodded once. "Cal Rusk." He didn't offer his hand. Instead, he reached under the desk and pulled out a clipboard. "Night clerk, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Room behind the office included. $40 cash per shift for the first week. Then we talk." $40 was terrible pay. The free room was the part that mattered. "When do you need someone?" I asked. Cal looked out the window at my dead car. "Seems like tonight." That should have been my first warning. Not the pay, not the isolated motel, not the way he stared at my car as if he already knew it would never start again. The first warning should have been how easily he hired me. But desperation makes people flexible, stupid too. I filled out a half-page employment form that asked fewer questions than a library card application. Cal watched me write. When I finished, he slid a key across the counter. Room 1 is yours, door inside the office hall. I'm staying in room 1? Not a guest room, staff room. He stood and grabbed a ring of keys from the wall. I'll show you around. There wasn't much to show. 12 guest rooms, numbered 2 through 13. That bothered me immediately. There's no room 1? I asked. You're in it. And you have a room 13? He looked at me. Numbers are numbers. That was not a normal answer. Rooms 2 through 8 faced the highway. Rooms 9 through 13 faced the empty lot behind the motel, where the drained pool sat under its tarp. Cal showed me where extra linens were stored, how to reset the breaker if the soda machine tripped it, where the cleaning cart was kept, and which rooms had bad plumbing. Room 6's sink dripped. Room 8's bathroom light flickered. Room 11's deadbolt stuck. Room 13 was not to be rented. He said that last part quickly while locking its door. Maintenance issue? I asked. Something like that. I looked at the door. Room 13 looked like every other room. Faded blue paint, brass number plate, rust-stained threshold, curtains drawn tight. What kind of issue? The kind you don't fix by opening the door. Again, not a normal answer. Again, I ignored it. The sun was almost down by the time we returned to the office. A dry wind moved across the parking lot, carrying dust and the faint smell of hot asphalt. Far away, an 18-wheeler rolled down the highway, its lights floating in the dim like a ship at sea. Inside, Cal opened the cash drawer and counted out a small bank of bills. Rooms are 48 plus tax. Weekly is $250. Truckers get coffee free if they fill the thermos themselves. Don't let anyone behind the desk. Don't leave the office unlocked if you go outside. Don't sleep during shift. I get it. No, he said. You don't. He reached under the counter again and pulled out a laminated sheet of paper. I should have left then. Any time an old man in the middle of nowhere gives you a laminated rule sheet, you should walk away. It doesn't matter how broke you are. It doesn't matter if your car is dead. It doesn't matter if you have nowhere else to sleep. Laminated rules are never a good sign. Cal laid the sheet on the counter. At the top, written in black marker, were the words, Starling Motel Night. Rules for the desk clerk, do not improvise. There were 17 rules. Rule 1, lock the office door at 10 p.m. exactly. Guests may still use the night window. Rule 2, never rent room 13, even if the system shows it as available. Rule 3, if a guest asks for a room that faces the pool, say the pool is closed. Rule 4, do not give anyone a key without seeing their reflection in the lobby mirror. Rule 5, if the vacancy sign turns blue, turn it off and do not rent rooms until it turns red again. Rule 6, never answer the payphone after midnight unless it rings once and stops. Rule 7, if room 7 calls the front desk, ask for the guest's last name before speaking. Rule 8, if a woman in a yellow dress asks for ice, give her an empty bucket and do not watch where she goes. Rule 9, do not enter any room between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock a.m., even if someone screams. Rule 10, if you see headlights enter the parking lot but no vehicle follows, close the curtains and stand behind the counter. Rule 11. The man in room 5 checks in every Thursday. Do not mention that he died in 1989. Rule 12. If someone knocks from inside the office closet, turn the TV volume up until it stops. Rule 13. Never look into the drained pool after dark. Rule 14. If a child asks for their mother, ask what room they came from. If they say room 13, lock yourself in the staff room. Rule 15. If the motel sign reads starling, you are safe. If it reads staring, do not look out the window. Rule 16. At 3:17 a.m., count the room keys. There should be 11. If there are 12, burn the extra one in the ashtray. Rule 17. If I call the office and ask whether room 13 is occupied, hang up immediately. I stared at the list. Then I looked at Cal. He waited. I said, "This is a joke." "No." "You give this to all new employees?" "You're the first new employee in 9 years." That did not make me feel better. "What happened to the last one?" Cal's eyes shifted toward the hallway. "She stopped following rules." "Did she quit?" He looked at me. "No." The office seemed to hum louder. Maybe it was the soda machine outside. Maybe the neon sign. Maybe my own blood pressure. I tapped the sheet. Room 5 checks in every Thursday and died in 1989? "Tomorrow's Thursday," Cal said. "That is not an explanation. It's a warning." I took a step back from the counter. "Look, I need work, but I'm not doing some weird local ghost motel routine." Cal folded his hands on the desk. "You can leave." I looked outside at my dead car. He followed my gaze. "Tow truck comes from Vega. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe Friday. Mechanics closed until morning. Nearest motel besides this one is 37 miles east." He wasn't threatening me. That was the worst part. He was just stating facts. I looked at the rules again. They were absurd, completely absurd. But the room was free. The shift was paid cash. And if nothing else, I could survive one night of an old man's weird superstitions and quit in the morning. That was what I told myself. "Fine," I said. "I'll follow the rules." Cal nodded. "Good." He pulled a second object from beneath the counter. An old brass desk bell. The kind guests slap to annoy clerks. It was tarnished, heavy, and colder than it should have been. "Keep this beside the register," he said. "What for? If something comes to the night window and you can't see its reflection, ring the bell once." "What happens then?" "Something else answers." I almost told him I was done. Instead, I took the bell. Because I was tired. Because I was scared to admit I was scared. Because people in horror stories make bad decisions for reasons that seem small at the time. Cal checked his watch. "Shift starts at 6. I'll be in back." "You live here?" "Yes." "What if I need you?" "You won't." "What if there's an emergency?" He opened the hallway door. "Then follow the rules faster." Then he left me alone in the office. For the first hour, nothing happened. That was almost worse than if something had. The office TV played local news with bad reception. The coffee burned in the pot. The neon vacancy sign buzzed red outside. The highway stretched empty in both directions. At 6:48, a trucker checked in. Real person. Real truck. Real reflection in the lobby mirror. I gave him room 4. He smelled like diesel and peppermint gum and barely looked at me while signing the card. At 7:22, an older couple took room 8. They complained about the flickering bathroom light before even seeing it, which made me wonder if they had stayed there before. At 8:10, a woman with 2 sleeping kids rented room 3. She looked exhausted enough that I upgraded her to a room away from the highway noise without charging extra. Room 9. She smiled like I had handed her a winning lottery ticket. "Thank you," she whispered. That made me feel good, normal, useful. At 9:15, a man in a cowboy hat came in, looked around the lobby, saw the mirror behind him, and immediately walked back out. I watched him cross the parking lot. There was no car. At 9:58, I stood by the office door with my hand on the lock. Rule 1. Lock the office door at 10 p.m. exactly. Guests may still use the night window. The second the clock turned 10 o'clock, I locked it. Nothing happened. I laughed quietly. "Great," I said to myself. "Nailed it." The office TV flickered. For half a second, the screen showed the parking lot from outside, as if a camera were pointed at the motel. There was no camera. Then the news came back. I turned the volume down and tried not to think about it. At 10:34, headlights appeared on the highway. They turned into the parking lot. I stood behind the desk, ready to check in another guest. The headlights crossed the cracked asphalt, then stopped. No engine sound, no tires, no vehicle, just headlights. 2 bright white beams hanging in the parking lot, about 3 feet above the ground. Rule 10. If you see headlights enter the parking lot but no vehicle follows, close the curtains and stand behind the counter. I closed the curtains. The office became dim and yellow. I stood behind the counter, heart pounding. The headlights shone through the fabric, turning it pale. Something moved outside. A shadow crossed the light. Then another. Then a hand pressed against the glass. Long fingers. Too many joints. The night window slid open by itself. I nearly screamed. A voice spoke through the small opening. "Room." It sounded like a man speaking through a mouth full of gravel. I looked toward the lobby mirror. The mirror reflected the counter, the coffee pot, the key rack, and me. It did not reflect anything at the night window. Rule 4. Do not give anyone a key without seeing their reflection. I reached for the brass bell. The voice at the window said, "Room." I rang the bell once. The sound was small, clear, and somehow much louder outside than inside. The hand vanished from the window. The headlights flickered. From somewhere far down the highway, another bell answered. Not the office bell. A deeper bell, like one hanging from an old gas station door miles away. The headlights reversed slowly out of the lot. Still no vehicle. Still no engine. They turned back onto the highway and disappeared. The night window slid shut. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes before I trusted my legs enough to move. At 11:07, the lobby phone rang. Not the payphone outside, the desk phone. I almost jumped out of my skin. I picked it up. Starling Motel. Static. Then a man said, "Front desk?" "Yes, this is room 7. I looked at the key rack. Room 7's key was hanging there. Empty. No guest. Rule 7. If room 7 calls the front desk, ask for the guest's last name before speaking. I swallowed. Last name on the room? Silence. Then the man said, "You know me." "Last name, please." A wet breathing sound filled the line. Then the man spoke in my father's voice. "Evan, don't be difficult." My father had been dead for 4 years. I hung up. The phone rang again, immediately. I did not answer. After the 7th ring, the office closet knocked. Tap, tap, tap. Rule 12. If someone knocks from inside the office closet, turn the TV volume up until it stops. The closet was beside the hallway door. Small, locked. I grabbed the TV remote and turned the volume up. The news anchor's voice filled the office. The knocking continued. Tap, tap, tap. I turned the volume higher. A weather report blasted through the room. The knocking became pounding. Thud, thud, thud. The closet door shook. I turned the TV up until the speaker distorted. The pounding stopped. On the TV, the meteorologist smiled at the camera and said, "Do not open that door." Then the screen cut back to the regular weather map. I sat down slowly. At 11:49, the payphone outside rang. It stood near the ice machine, under the awning, a dirty metal relic I hadn't even noticed until then. It rang once, then stopped. Rule 6 said never answer the payphone after midnight, unless it rings once and stops. It was not midnight yet, so I did not answer. At 12:03, it rang again, once, then stopped. I stared through the curtain gap at the payphone. The handset swayed slightly. No one stood beside it. I didn't answer. At 12:20, a woman in a yellow dress knocked on the night window. She appeared so suddenly, I stumbled backward. She was maybe 30, with dark hair pinned up, red lipstick, and a yellow dress that looked old-fashioned without looking like a costume. She held a plastic ice bucket in both hands. I looked toward the lobby mirror. She had a reflection. That almost made me feel better. Almost. Her reflection was smiling. She was not. The window slid open. "May I have some ice?" she asked. Rule 8. If a woman in a yellow dress asks for ice, give her an empty bucket and do not watch where she goes. I took an empty bucket from beneath the counter and handed it through the window. She gave me the full bucket she was holding. It was heavy, too heavy. I did not look inside. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome." She turned away. I forced myself not to watch. I stared at the coffee maker instead. I heard her heels click across the parking lot. Click, click, click. Then across gravel, then across wood, then the sound of a door opening. A room door. I did not look. I waited until the footsteps stopped completely. Then I placed her heavy bucket on the floor behind the counter and backed away from it. Something inside shifted. Wet. Slow. I left it there. At 1:12 a.m., the vacancy sign turned blue. Not flickered. Turned. The red neon drained into cold blue light, filling the parking lot with an underwater glow. Rule 5. If the vacancy sign turns blue, turn it off and do not rent rooms until it turns red again. I found the switch under the counter and flipped it. The sign went dark. The office lights dimmed with it. Outside, every motel room window curtain glowed faintly blue. Even the empty rooms. Even room 13. Especially room 13. A car pulled into the lot 5 minutes later. A real car this time. Old sedan. Dusty. Engine knocking. A man got out and came to the night window. He had a reflection. He had a wallet. He had a tired face and a wedding ring. "Need a room," he said. "I'm sorry," I told him. "No vacancy." He looked past me at the key rack. "You have keys. System is down. I saw the sign from the road. It's off now." He sighed. "Man, please, I've been driving 16 hours. I wanted to help him. That was the worst part. He looked real. He sounded real. His reflection looked normal. Then he said, "I don't care what room. Give me one that faces the pool." Rule 3. If a guest asks for a room that faces the pool, say the pool is closed. "The pool is closed," I said. His expression went blank. Not angry, not disappointed. Blank, like someone had switched him off. He stared at me, then slowly leaned closer to the window. "The pool is always closed," he whispered. I shut the night window. He stood there for another minute. Then he walked back to his car, got in, and drove away without turning on his headlights. The vacancy sign stayed dark. At 1:58, someone screamed from room 8. The older couple. The scream cut through the office, sharp and human and terrified. I grabbed the master key ring before my brain caught up. Then I saw Rule 9. Do not enter any room between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock a.m., even if someone screams. The clock read 1:59, 1 minute before the rule. Another scream, a woman this time. "Help!" I ran to the door. My hand was on the lock when the office clock clicked to 2 o'clock. The screaming stopped. All at once. I stood there breathing hard. A soft knock came from outside the office door. "Front desk?" the woman from room 8 called. "We're okay now." Her voice was calm. Too calm. I checked the security peephole. She stood outside the office door in her nightgown, smiling. Blood ran down both sides of her face from her eyes. "I just need towels," she said. I backed away. "I can give them to you at 3. Her smile widened. "That's too late." From behind her, her husband stepped into view. His head was turned completely backward. He lifted one hand and waved. I did not open the door. At 2:17, the office closet knocked again. This time, I turned the TV up immediately. The screen showed static. Then the motel parking lot. Room 13's door was open. On the screen, a child stood in the doorway. A little girl in pink pajamas, holding a stuffed rabbit by one ear. The office lights flickered. The TV volume rose on its own. Through the speakers, the girl said, "I can't find my mother. Rule 14. If a child asks for their mother, ask what room they came from. If they say room 13, lock yourself in the staff room." The girl was on the TV, not at the window, not in the office, but I knew the motel didn't care about details. I spoke carefully. "What room did you come from?" The girl on the screen smiled. 13. The office closet door opened, just an inch. I ran to the staff room. It was down the short hall behind the desk, beside Cal's private door. I unlocked it with shaking hands, stepped inside, and slammed the door. Something hit the other side immediately. Hard. The room was small, with a bed, dresser, lamp, sink, and one narrow window facing the back lot. I locked the door. Then I shoved the dresser in front of it. Another impact shook the frame. The little girl's voice came from the hallway. "I found you." I backed away until my legs hit the bed. The window curtain was open. Outside, the drained pool sat under its sagging blue tarp. Rule 13. Never look into the drained pool after dark. I tried to close the curtain without looking down. I really did. But fear makes your eyes stupid. They flicked downward for half a second. The tarp was gone. The pool was empty, not drained empty. A deep concrete pit under blue moonlight. At the bottom stood dozens of people. Guests, clerks, children, truckers. A woman in a yellow dress. A man holding an empty room key. All of them looking up at my window. In the center of the pool stood Cal Rusk, the owner. He looked up at me and smiled. Then the phone beside the staff bed rang. I turned slowly. There was no phone there when I entered. Now an old beige receiver sat on the nightstand. It rang again. Once, twice, 3 times. I did not pick up. It stopped. Then Cal's voice came from the other side of the staff room door. "Evan?" My blood went cold. He knocked gently. Tap, tap, tap. "I need to ask you something." I did not answer. His voice lowered. Is room 13 occupied? Rule 17. If I call the office and ask whether room 13 is occupied, hang up immediately. But he wasn't calling the office. He was standing outside my door. The rules had gaps. They always did. The phone rang again. Once, then stopped. The payphone rule. After midnight, answer only if it rings once and stops. I picked up the receiver. Static. Then Cal's real voice whispered through the line. Hang up on me. I looked at the door. The thing outside asked again, in Cal's voice. Is room 13 occupied? Real Cal whispered through the phone. Hang up. So I did. The thing outside screamed. The sound tore through the staff room and rattled the window. The people in the drained pool below all opened their mouths at once, screaming silently up at me. Then the motel sign outside flickered. Through the side of the curtain, I saw its red glow return. But the letters were wrong. Staring Motel, Rule 15. If the motel sign reads Starling, you are safe. If it reads Staring, do not look out the window. I turned away too late. The people in the pool were gone. Only one person remained at the bottom. Me, standing in my work shirt, looking up, smiling. Behind me, the staff room door unlocked itself, and from the hallway, the little girl whispered, Room 13 is ready now. Room 13 is ready now. The little girl whispered it from the hallway. The staff room door unlocked itself. Click. Just one soft click. But in that tiny room, with my back to the window and the motel sign outside spelling Staring in red neon, it sounded louder than a gunshot. I stood frozen beside the bed, the dead phone receiver still in my hand. The dresser I had pushed in front of the door scraped backward by itself. An inch, then another. Wood dragged across carpet. Slow, patient. Like whatever stood outside knew it had all night. The little girl giggled. Not loudly, not like a happy child. A small, breathy sound. The kind children make when they are hiding and know you are about to find them. I looked toward the narrow window, then jerked my eyes away. Rule 15. If the motel sign reads Staring, do not look out the window. Too late for that, probably. But I wasn't going to make it worse. The phone in my hand hissed, static. Then Cal's real voice whispered through the receiver. Evan? I almost answered. Almost. Then I remembered the night was making every voice dangerous. Instead, I held the phone to my ear and said nothing. Cal breathed hard on the other end. Good, he whispered. Don't speak unless I ask you a yes or no question. The dresser scraped another inch away from the door. The little girl outside hummed softly. The tune was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Something old. Something children sang while jumping rope. Cal said, Is the staff room door still closed? I swallowed, then said, Yes. The humming stopped. Cal hissed through the phone. Not out loud. I squeezed my eyes shut. Stupid. I had already answered. The hallway went silent. Then the little girl knocked. Tap, tap, tap. Evan, she said sweetly. She had my voice now, not a child's voice. Mine. Is the staff room door still closed? My stomach turned. Cal whispered, Don't answer it. The dresser dragged back another inch. The door handle turned. The little girl, using my voice, sighed. You're making this harder. I backed toward the corner of the room, keeping my eyes away from the window. What do? I whispered into the phone. Cal was silent for 2 seconds. Then he said, Look under the bed. Every part of me rejected that instruction. No. The word slipped out before I could stop it. The door handle stopped turning. From the hallway, my own voice whispered, "Look under the bed." I gripped the phone tighter. Cal's real voice said, "There's a cigar box taped underneath the frame. Take it out. Don't open it yet." The dresser stopped moving. The room became still. Too still. I crouched. The carpet smelled like mildew and old smoke. My knees sank into it. I kept my head turned away from the window and reached under the bed with one hand. Dust, a loose spring, a dead insect, then cardboard. No, wood. My fingers brushed something rectangular taped to the underside of the bed frame. I pulled. The tape resisted. The hallway voice whispered, "Don't take what isn't yours." I yanked harder. The box came loose. The staff room door shook violently. The little girl screamed, not in anger, in panic. That scared me more than the giggling had. I sat on the floor with the cigar box in my lap. It was old, dark wood with no label. A strip of electrical tape held it shut. Something rattled inside. Cal's voice on the phone said, "Do you have it?" I tapped once on the receiver because I no longer trusted myself to speak. "Good. Open it only when the clock hits 3:17. I looked at the small alarm clock beside the bed. 2:41 a.m., 36 minutes. The door shook again, harder. The little girl's voice returned to normal. "You can't hide in there forever." Cal said, "Listen carefully. The staff room is safe as long as you don't look out the window and don't open that box early." The phone crackled. Behind the static, I heard wind, then highway noise, then something that sounded like water sloshing. Water from the drained pool. I remembered seeing Cal at the bottom of it. I whispered, "Where are you?" Silence. Then Cal said, "Where all owners end up if they stay too long." The line went dead. The staff room lights flickered. The little girl outside stopped knocking. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then she said, "I know what's in the box." I held it against my chest. Her voice dropped lower. "It won't save you." The hallway floor creaked. Once, twice. Then her footsteps moved away. I stayed on the floor with the cigar box until my legs cramped. At 2:52 a.m., the phone rang again, once, then stopped. I didn't answer. It rang again, once, then stopped. I still didn't answer. Then it rang twice. Wrong rule, wrong pattern. I let it ring. After the fifth failed ring, the TV in the office turned on. I let it ring. After the fifth failed ring, the TV in the office turned on. I hear it through the wall. Static first, then a man's voice. A news anchor. Local authorities are still investigating I let it ring. After the fifth failed ring, the TV in the office turned on. Disappearance of a night clerk at the Starling Motel. The staff room wall was thin enough that I could hear every word. 23-year-old Rachel Voss was last seen working the overnight shift on Thursday, August 16th, 2014. The last employee. The one Cal said stopped following rules. The TV voice continued. Owner Calvin Rusk denied allegations that the motel had a history of missing employees. The broadcast cut to static. Then a woman spoke, not the anchor, young, shaking. "Don't open room 13. I stopped breathing. The voice came from the TV, muffled through the wall, but it sounded close. "Don't count the keys if the mirror is covered." Static. Then the woman said, "He doesn't own the motel. He just feeds it slowly." I looked at the cigar box. 3:01 a.m., 16 minutes. Something tapped the window behind me. Tap, tap, tap. I squeezed my eyes shut. No, not looking. The tapping came again. Then my own voice, from outside the window, whispered. Rachel lied. I pressed my palms over my ears. The motel sign buzzed outside, bright enough that red light leaked through my eyelids. Staring. I knew it still said staring. I could feel it. Somehow that word was looking at me. At 3:09, the staff room door opened, just an inch. The lock didn't click. The dresser didn't move. The door simply opened through it, like the wood and metal had stopped agreeing on where solid things belonged. A strip of hallway appeared, dark carpet, yellow wall, a small bare foot. I held the cigar box tighter. The little girl bent down until one eye appeared in the crack. It was not a child's eye. It was the dark center of a peephole, like I was looking through her into another room. She smiled. "Evan?" I said nothing. "Room 13 doesn't like waiting." Nothing. "You looked in the pool." My skin went cold. "You saw yourself down there?" Nothing. "That means it saw you too." The alarm clock changed. 3:10. The little girl's smile widened. "It only needs 7 minutes." The door closed. The hallway went silent. I wanted to cry. I'm not ashamed to admit that. Not a dramatic sob. Not panic. Just the helpless, exhausted kind of crying that comes when your body has been terrified for too long and still expects you to make decisions. I sat with my back against the bed and stared at the clock. 3:11, 3:12, 3:13. From the office, the key rack began to rattle. Softly at first, then louder. Keys swinging on hooks. Room 2, room 3, room 4. All of them. The night wanted me out there for Rule 16. At 3:17 a.m., count the room keys. There should be 11. If there are 12, burn the extra one in the ashtray. But Cal had told me to open the box at 3:17, not count the keys first. Which rule mattered more? The key rack rattled harder. The office TV whispered, "Count them." The little girl whispered from the hallway, "Open the box." Cal's voice whispered from the phone, though it had not rung, "Wait." The clock hit 3:17. Everything stopped. The key rack, the TV, the neon sign, the humming from the soda machine, the wind, the highway. For 1 second, the entire motel held its breath. I tore the tape off the cigar box and opened it. Inside were 3 things: a matchbook, an old Polaroid photo, and a motel key. Room 1, my room, the staff room. Except I already had the room 1 key in my pocket. I took out the Polaroid first. It showed the motel office, maybe 20 or 30 years earlier. Same counter, same TV, same mirror, same key rack. Cal stood behind the desk, younger but recognizable. Beside him stood a woman in a yellow dress, the woman from the ice bucket. In front of them stood a little girl in pink pajamas holding a stuffed rabbit. Room 13's child. Behind them, in the lobby mirror, all 3 reflections were visible. But there was a 4th reflection. A man standing in the hallway behind Cal. Tall, thin, wearing a dark suit, no face. On the back of the photo, someone had written, "The first owner never left." My fingers went numb. I took out the matchbook. The cover read, "Starling Motel, sleep safe under Texas skies." Inside were 4 matches, only 4. The motel key was cold enough to burn my fingers. Room 1, staff room. I looked at the alarm clock. 3:18. I had missed the key count, or maybe the box was the count. I didn't know. Then something slid under the staff room door. A key. It came to rest on the carpet in front of me. Brass tag. Room 13. The extra key. The door whispered in Rachel's voice from the TV, "Burn it." I opened the matchbook with shaking hands. 4 matches. I struck the first one. It broke. The room laughed. Not the little girl, not Cal, the room itself. I picked up the second match. The staff room phone rang once, stopped. I ignored it. I struck the second match. It lit. Small flame. Orange. Real. I grabbed the room 13 key from the floor and held it over the ashtray on the nightstand. The key twitched in my fingers, like a living thing. The flame touched the brass. At first, nothing happened. Then the key screamed. It made no sense. Metal cannot scream. But it did. A thin, high sound, like steam, and a child and tires skidding all at once. The key blackened. Smoke rose. The little girl shrieked in the hallway. The staff room door slammed shut. The neon sign outside buzzed violently. Through the curtain, the red light changed. I didn't look, but I felt it. Starling, not staring. The motel blinked. Safe, maybe, for now. I opened the staff room door slowly. The hallway was empty. The office beyond looked normal, except for the key rack. Every key hung in place. Rooms 2 through 12, 11 keys. Room 13's hook was empty. In the ashtray beside the staff bed, the burned key had melted into a black lump. I took it with me using a washcloth and stepped into the office. The TV showed static. Then Rachel appeared. Not a broadcast. Not a recording. She stood on screen in the motel office, wearing a clerk's shirt like mine. Her face was pale, eyes ringed with exhaustion. She looked directly at me. "You made it past 317, she said. I stared. "Can you hear me?" She nodded once. I almost laughed. Instead, I whispered, "Are you alive?" She smiled sadly. "No, of course." The screen flickered. Behind her, in the TV version of the office, the hallway door stood open. Something moved inside it. Rachel glanced back. "We don't have long." "Who are you?" "Rachel, night clerk before you." "What happened?" "I rented room 13. My stomach dropped. "Why?" "Because the owner asked me if it was occupied." "Cal?" She shook her head. "Not Cal." The office lights buzzed overhead. Rachel stepped closer to the camera. "Cal is part of it, but he isn't in charge. The motel had an owner before him, before the sign, before the highway moved, before this building was even called Starling. The man in the photo?" Her expression tightened. "He built the first place here, a motor court, 12 rooms and a pool. He wanted 13, but the county denied the permit, so he made one anyway." "Room 13, not a room," she said. "A door." The TV crackled. Rachel looked behind her again. "Listen, the rules keep the motel hungry enough to stay quiet. They don't free anyone." I thought of Cal at the bottom of the pool, the people standing there. The woman in yellow, the child, the truckers, the clerks. "All those people in the pool," I said. "What are they?" "Guests who never checked out." "What does that mean?" "It means don't become one." The hallway behind TV Rachel darkened. A shape stepped into view. Tall, thin, dark suit, no face. Rachel turned back to me, terrified. "Thursday is worse," I swallowed. "The man in room 5 checks in every Thursday." "Yes, let him. He died in 1989. "Yes." "Why does he matter?" Rachel's image started to distort. Her voice became staticky. "Because he remembers the old owner's name." The faceless man moved closer behind her. Rachel spoke fast. "Don't ask him directly. Don't mention death. Don't mention room 13. Give him room 5, black coffee, and the Bible from the drawer." "What Bible?" "You'll find it after sunrise." The faceless man placed one hand on her shoulder. Rachel froze. The TV began to bleed black liquid from the bottom of the screen. "Rachel?" Her eyes stayed on mine. "One more rule," she whispered. The TV volume surged. "Never trust Cal after he comes back dry." The screen went black. The office was silent. Then the hallway door opened. Cal stepped out, dry, completely dry. Same pearl snap shirt, same pale eyes, same calm expression. "Eventful night?" he asked. I couldn't speak. He looked at the ashtray in my hand, then at the key rack. "Good, you burned the extra." I stepped back. "Where were you?" "In back." "No, you weren't." His expression did not change. "It's nearly morning. You should get some sleep." "You called me from the pool." Cal's eyes sharpened slightly. "Did I?" "Rachel said not to trust you if you came back dry." For the first time, he looked genuinely angry. "You spoke to Rachel?" "On the TV." He stared at the black screen. Then he sighed. "I told her too much too." I backed toward the counter where the brass bell sat. Cal noticed. "Don't." My hand hovered over it. "Are you real?" His mouth twitched. "That's a childish question." "Are you alive?" Less childish. He stepped closer. I rang the bell. Once. The sound cut through the room. Cal flinched like it physically hurt. From far down the highway, the deeper bell answered. Cal closed his eyes. "You shouldn't call things you don't understand. You've been doing that all night." He smiled without opening his eyes. "No, Evan, I've been answering them." The office door rattled. Someone stood outside at the night window. The curtains were still drawn, but I could see a silhouette. Broad hat, long coat. Cal opened his eyes. Fear. Real fear. "Do not open that window," he whispered. A voice outside said, "Room." It was the gravel-mouth voice from the headlights. Cal reached for the desk drawer. I grabbed his wrist. He looked down at my hand like he was surprised I dared touch him. The night window slid open by itself. Cold desert air entered the office. The voice outside said again, "Room." Cal whispered, "Give it one." "No reflection," I said. "You don't know what you're doing." "Then explain." The silhouette at the window leaned closer. The lobby mirror reflected nothing. Cal's face had gone gray. "You rang the bell," he said. "Now something has to be answered." The voice at the window changed. It became Rachel's. "Give him Cal." Cal's eyes widened. I looked at him. "What?" He shook his head once. "Evan." The silhouette at the window extended one hand. Long fingers, too many joints. The office TV turned on behind us. Rachel appeared again, flickering and weak. "First owner takes clerks," she said. "Road takes owners." Cal whispered, "Rachel, don't." She looked at me. "Give him Cal's key." Cal lunged for the key rack. I grabbed the staff room key from my pocket. "Room 1. Cal shouted, "No!" The thing at the window opened its palm. I placed the room 1 key into it. The fingers closed. Cal collapsed to his knees. Outside, the faceless silhouette made a pleased sound. Not human, not animal, like a car engine turning over after years of rust. Then the headlights appeared in the parking lot again. No vehicle, just light. They backed slowly toward the highway. Cal crawled toward me, one hand out. "You idiot," he rasped. I was keeping him on the road. The headlights vanished. The night window shut. Cal lay on the carpet, breathing hard. For the first time, he looked truly old. The TV went black. Dawn began to lighten the edges of the curtains. I thought it was over, at least for the night. Then the key rack rattled. 1 key fell from its hook. Room 5. It hit the floor at my feet. Outside, a car rolled into the parking lot. A long black Cadillac with white wall tires, spotless despite the dust. It parked in front of room 5. A man stepped out wearing a brown suit and a narrow tie. He looked about 40, tired, ordinary, dead since 1989. He walked to the night window and tapped once. Cal lifted his head from the floor and whispered, "Thursday." I looked at the clock. 6:01 a.m. Sunrise. The man at the window smiled politely. "Checking in," he said. Behind him, room 13's curtains opened by themselves, and standing inside the glass was the faceless owner in the dark suit. "Checking in," the man said. He stood at the night window in a brown suit, narrow tie, polished shoes, and a tired little smile that looked like it had been waiting 35 years to be used again. Behind him, the black Cadillac idled silently in the parking lot. No exhaust, no engine rumble, no dust settling around the tires. Just a long, clean car from another decade sitting under the motel lights like it had driven out of an old photograph. Room 5's key lay on the floor at my feet. Cal was still on the carpet behind the counter, breathing hard, one hand clutching his chest like I had punched a hole through it by giving away the room one key. Room 13's curtains had opened. Inside the dark glass stood the faceless owner, tall, thin, dark suit, no eyes, no mouth, no features at all. And somehow I knew he was looking directly at me. The man at the window tapped once more, not 3 times, just once. "Room 5, he said politely. "I believe it's reserved." I looked at Cal. His face had gone pale. "Give it to him," he whispered. That was the first thing he had said all night that didn't sound like an order. It sounded like a prayer. I bent slowly and picked up the key. The brass tag was warm. Room 5. Rule 11. The man in room 5 checks in every Thursday. Do not mention that he died in 1989. Rachel's voice echoed in my memory. Give him room 5, black coffee, and the Bible from the drawer. I turned toward the desk drawers. Cal grabbed my ankle. "Don't," he rasped. I looked down at him. Rachel said he remembers the old owner's name. Cal's grip tightened. "You don't want that name. I want out. There is no out." The man at the night window waited patiently, hands folded in front of him. He looked so normal that for a second, the whole night felt ridiculous again. Maybe I had hallucinated everything from exhaustion and stress. Maybe Cal was insane. Maybe I was insane. Maybe the motel was just old and creepy, and the man in the suit was only a traveler who liked vintage cars. Then I glanced at the lobby mirror. The man in the brown suit had a reflection, but his Cadillac did not. I pulled my ankle free. The desk drawer stuck when I tugged it, swollen from age or humidity or whatever dark liquid the TV had bled earlier. I yanked harder. It opened. Inside was a Gideon Bible, old, black cover, gold lettering nearly rubbed away. Beside it sat a stack of guest registration cards tied with string, a fountain pen, and a yellowed photograph of the motel pool back when it still held water. I took the Bible. Cal groaned. "You don't know what she is." "Rachel?" He laughed weakly. "She rented room 13. You think that leaves people honest?" The man at the window said, "Sir?" His voice was still polite, still patient, still terrible. I poured black coffee from the pot into a paper cup. It had been sitting there for hours, burnt and thick, but steam rose from it anyway. I slid the key, coffee, and Bible through the night window. The man accepted each item with care. "Much obliged," he said. I swallowed. "Last name?" Cal made a strangled sound behind me. The man in the brown suit smiled, not too wide, not monstrous, just sad. "Whitaker," he said. "Daniel Whitaker." I wrote it on the registration card. My hand shook so badly the pen scratched through the paper. "Staying one night?" I asked. "That depends." On what? He looked past me, toward the hallway behind the office. Whether the owner remembers me. The lights flickered. Cal whispered, "Don't ask him anything else." I looked at Daniel Whitaker. I kept my voice low. "Do you remember the first owner's name?" The motel went completely silent. The TV, the soda machine, the neon sign, the highway. Even Cal stopped breathing. Daniel's polite expression faded. For the first time, he looked afraid. He lowered his eyes to the Bible in his hands. "You shouldn't need that name." "I do." "No," he said softly. "You need a way to leave." Those are not always the same thing. Behind him, room 13's door opened. Not just the curtains this time. The door. A rectangle of darkness appeared under the red motel sign. The faceless owner stood inside. Daniel did not turn around. Cal crawled backward until his shoulders hit the cabinets. Daniel whispered, "He's listening." "What is he?" "A debt with legs." "That's not an answer. It's the only honest one." Then Daniel took his key, coffee, and Bible and walked away from the window. He crossed the parking lot without looking at room 13. The faceless owner watched him pass. Daniel unlocked room 5 and stepped inside. Before closing the door, he looked back at me. Then he said, "Do not open the pool gate before sunrise." The door shut. I checked the office clock. 6:04 a.m. The sky outside was lightening, but the sun had not cleared the horizon. Not fully. Not yet. Behind me, Cal started laughing. Quietly at first, then harder. I turned. He sat on the floor, back against the cabinets, one hand over his face. "You did it now," he said. "What? You checked him in before sunrise?" "He said he was supposed to check in. On Thursday nights. It's Thursday. Not anymore." I looked at the clock again. 6:05 a.m. Friday morning. My stomach dropped. Cal lowered his hand. His eyes were wet, but whether from fear or pain, I couldn't tell. "The motel doesn't care about clocks the way we do," he said. "It cares about thresholds, night clerk, night window, Thursday guest, sunrise. You gave him the room before the night let go." The office phone rang. Both of us froze. It rang once, stopped, then again. Once, stopped, then again. Once, stopped. Wrong pattern. I didn't answer. Cal stared at it like it was a snake. "You need to give me back my key," he said. "Room 1? "Yes." I gave it to the thing outside. "Yes," he snapped. "And now I don't have a room." "You mean you don't have protection?" He didn't answer. That was answer enough. The staff room door behind the office hallway creaked open. Slowly, Cal looked toward it and began shaking his head. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." From inside the staff room came Rachel's voice. "Cal?" He squeezed his eyes shut. "Not her." Rachel stepped into the hallway. She wore the Starling Motel clerk shirt from the TV broadcast. Pale blue, name tag, dark hair pulled back messily. Her face looked almost alive, except for the faint static shimmer around her edges. She looked at me first, then at Cal. "You kept doing it," she said. Cal's jaw trembled. "I kept the place quiet." "You kept feeding it clerks." "I kept it from taking guests." Rachel smiled sadly. "You say that like clerks aren't people." The closet door knocked once, then twice, then stopped. Something inside was listening. I looked at Rachel. "How do I end this?" Cal barked a laugh. "You don't," Rachel ignored him. "You need the first owner's name." Daniel wouldn't give it. "He can't say it in the office. None of us can." "Then where?" Rachel looked toward the back window. "The pool." "No." Cal tried to stand. He failed and slid back down. "No," he said again. "You open that pool gate. and everything down there gets a path." Rachel turned on him. "Everything down there already has a path. It's called the night shift." The motel sign buzzed outside. For a few seconds, the red light flickered between snarling and staring. Safe, not safe. Safe, not safe. Then it steadied on snarling. Rachel looked relieved. "Sunrise is close," Cal whispered. "Not close enough." Room 5's phone began ringing. I heard it through the office wall. One ring, stop. One ring, stop. One ring, stop. Daniel Whitaker's voice came through the front desk phone speaker, though no one had answered. "He's in the Bible." I grabbed the receiver. "Daniel?" No response. "Where?" The line crackled. Then Daniel said, "Book of Numbers." I opened the Bible with shaking hands. The pages were thin, yellow, and spotted with brown stains. I flipped until I found Numbers. A name had been underlined in red pencil, not printed, written in the margin. Silas Vane. The instant I read it, the office mirror cracked. A single line split it from top to bottom. Cal screamed, "Don't say it." I hadn't meant to, but names are dangerous things. Once your eyes know them, your mouth wants to follow. I clamped my lips shut. Rachel stepped back like the name had burned her. "That's him," she whispered. Silas Vane, the first owner, the faceless man, the builder of the illegal 13th room, the thing that had turned a roadside motel into a mouth. Room 13's door slammed shut outside. Then every room phone started ringing, all at once. Room 2, Room 3, Room 4, Room 5, Room 6, Room 7, Room 8, Room 9, Room 10, Room 11, Room 12, Room 13, even the staff room. The sound filled the office, muffled through walls, shrill and overlapping. Cal covered his ears. Rachel looked toward the pool. "Now." I grabbed the matchbook from the cigar box and the black lump of melted Room 13 key from the ashtray. "What do I do with these?" "Bring them." Cal lunged toward me with sudden strength. "Do not open that gate." I shoved him back. He hit the counter and dropped to the floor, gasping. For a second, I felt bad. Then the closet door opened behind him, just an inch. Something inside reached out and gently touched his shoulder. Cal went still. A voice from the closet whispered, "Owner." His face collapsed. "No," he said. The hand began pulling him backward. Rachel and I both moved at the same time, but Cal raised one shaking hand. "Don't." The closet widened behind him. It should have been shallow, a tiny storage space with cleaning supplies. Instead, beyond the door was highway. Dark road, white lines, headlights far away. Cal looked at me. For the first time, there was no manipulation in his face, only terror. "I answered him once," he said. "That's how it starts." The hand pulled him farther in. "I thought I could manage it," Rachel whispered. "Cal." He looked at her. "I'm sorry." Then the closet took him. The door snapped shut. The office went quiet. All the ringing stopped except Room 5. One ring. Stop. One ring. Stop. Rachel grabbed the Bible. "Come on!" We ran out the back office door. The morning air was cold and dry. The sky was turning pale purple over the flat land, but the sun still hadn't broken the horizon. The empty pool sat behind the motel, surrounded by a rusted chain-link fence. I had seen it from the window as a pit full of impossible people. Now it looked ordinary. That made it worse. A sagging blue tarp covered half of it. The other half gaped open, showing cracked concrete, dead leaves, dirt, and something dark gathered in the deep end. The pool gate was chained shut. A sign hung from it. "Pool closed. No swimming under that. Someone had scratched. No checkouts. Rachel stopped at the gate. I can't open it. Why not? I'm checked in. What does that mean? It means I belong on the other side. I looked at her face. You're in the pool, she nodded. So how are you here? Room 13 leaves copies. I did not like that answer. From the motel, doors began opening. Room 2, room 3, room 4, one by one. Guests stepped out. The trucker from room 4. The older couple from room 8, both normal now, except for the blood dried beneath the woman's eyes. The mother from room 9, holding her sleeping children. People I had never checked in. People in clothes from different decades. All of them stood in front of their rooms and watched us. Room 5 opened last. Daniel Whitaker stepped out holding the Bible. Wait. The Bible was in Rachel's hands. I looked down. It was gone. Daniel now held it. Rachel's hands were empty. He crossed the parking lot toward us. Behind him, room 13 opened. Silas Vane stepped out. Dark suit, no face. The motel sign flickered, staring. I looked away fast. Rachel whispered, "Gate." I grabbed the chain. It was locked with a rusted padlock. No key, of course. I took the melted black lump that had been room 13's key and pressed it against the lock. The lock clicked open. Not melted, not broke. Opened. The chain fell. The pool gate swung inward. Wind rushed up from the drained pool. Not into it, out of it. Hot wind smelling like chlorine, old pennies, sun-baked concrete, and rot. At the bottom of the pool, figures appeared. Dozens of them, then hundreds. They stood shoulder to shoulder in the deep end, all looking up. Guests, clerks, owners, children, people in towels, people in road clothes, people with suitcases. A woman in a yellow dress, a little girl in pink pajamas, Cal Rusk. He had joined them already, or maybe he had always been there. His face looked up at me from the crowd, wet, pale. Sorry. Daniel reached the fence and handed me the Bible through the opening. He did not cross inside. Book of Numbers, he said. I found the name. That is not enough. What do I do? He looked at the matchbook in my hand. Every motel needs a registry. Rachel stepped beside me. The guest cards. The registration cards in the desk drawer. I hadn't brought them. My face must have shown it. Rachel closed her eyes. I can get them. No, I said. You can't go back inside. Not while the sign says staring. She turned toward the motel. Silas stood in the parking lot now. The faceless head angled slightly toward us. He raised one hand. The little girl from room 13 appeared beside him, holding her rabbit. "Rachel," she called. Rachel flinched. Daniel whispered, "Don't answer." But Rachel was already moving. She ran toward the office. Silas did not chase her. He didn't need to. Every guest turned to watch. Rachel reached the office door, slipped inside, and vanished. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then the motel sign buzzed violently. Starling, staring, starling, staring. A scream came from the office. Rachel. I started toward her. Daniel grabbed my arm. His hand was ice. She knew. What? She knew what going back meant. The office window filled with static. Not TV static. Real static, crawling over the glass like insects. Rachel stumbled out, holding the bundle of registration cards. The faceless owner stood behind her, one hand buried through her chest, not stabbing, holding. Like his arm had passed into the space where her heart should have been and found something to grip. Rachel looked at me across the parking lot. Then she threw the cards. They scattered across the asphalt. The Texas wind caught them. For one impossible second, every card hung in the air. Then they flew toward the pool. Daniel grabbed them from the air one by one without moving fast enough to explain it. Cards slapped into his hands, into the Bible, into the open pages of Numbers. Rachel collapsed. Silas pulled his arm back. She fell to the ground like a puppet with cut strings. The little girl walked over to her. She crouched beside Rachel and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then Rachel's body flickered and vanished. At the bottom of the pool, a new figure appeared. Rachel, standing beside Cal. She looked up at me and nodded. Daniel handed me the Bible. Every registration card was tucked inside it. Names of guests, names of clerks, names written in ink, pencil, blood, coffee, and something black that was still wet. At the top of the open page, Silas Vane's name had been written over and over in the margin. "What now?" I asked. Daniel looked toward the horizon. The sun was almost there. "Read the checkout line." I looked at the guest cards. Each had the same format: name, room, date, vehicle, payment, signature, checkout. Most checkout lines were blank. I understood. The motel didn't kill people. It never let them check out. I took the pen from my shirt pocket. My hand shook. On Rachel's card, I wrote, "Checked out." The pool screamed. Every figure at the bottom opened their mouth. The air filled with the sound of keys rattling, phones ringing, tires on highway, water splashing, children crying, a desk bell ringing again and again. Rachel vanished from the pool. Not faded. Vanished. One guest gone. One room empty. Silas turned his faceless head toward me. For the first time all night, he moved quickly. He crossed the parking lot in long, unnatural strides. Daniel stepped between us. Silas stopped. Daniel opened the Bible and held it against his chest. "You remember me," Daniel said. Silas's blank face tilted. Daniel smiled sadly. "I was the first guest you kept." The pool wind roared. Daniel turned to me. "Keep writing." I wrote Cal Rusk. Checked out. Cal vanished from the pool. The motel office windows shattered. I wrote the woman in the yellow dress. Checked out. She vanished. The ice machine outside exploded, spilling cubes across the parking lot that melted into black water. I wrote the little girl. I didn't know her name. Her registration card said, Emily Vane, room 13, Vane, Silas's daughter. My hand froze. The little girl stood in the parking lot beside Silas, clutching her rabbit. She looked at me with eyes that were almost human. Daniel whispered, "She was the door." "What?" "The room needed a first guest." "I wanted to be sick," Emily smiled. "Daddy says I can't leave." I looked at Silas. No face, no shame, no grief, just hunger wearing a suit. I wrote, "Emily Vane, checked out." The girl gasped. The stuffed rabbit fell from her hands. For 1 second, she looked like a child who had just woken from a long, terrible dream. Then she vanished. Room 13's door slammed shut so hard the number plate fell off. Silas screamed without a mouth. The motel sign exploded in red sparks. I kept writing. Name after name, guest after guest. Some I recognized, most I didn't. Every time I wrote checked out, someone vanished from the bottom of the pool. The crowd thinned, the wind grew hotter, the sky brightened. Silas pushed past Daniel. Daniel grabbed him. They did not fight like men. They flickered. Daniel's brown suit changed to road dust and blood. Silas's dark suit became shadow and peeling wallpaper. For a moment, I saw them as they had been in 1989. Daniel staggering from room 5. bleeding from the head, trying to reach the office while Cal watched from behind the curtains. Then the vision snapped away. Daniel shouted, "Evan!" I wrote faster, my hand cramped. Ink smeared across cards. Checked out, checked out, checked out. The pool bottom emptied. Only one card remained. Daniel Whitaker. Room 5. Checked in. Thursday. Checkout. Blank. I looked up. Daniel still held Silas back, but he was fading. "Do it," he said. I wrote, "Checked out." Daniel smiled. "Much obliged." Then he vanished. Silas turned to me. The pool was empty, completely empty, except for one figure standing at the very bottom. Me. The version I had seen from the staff room window. My card was in the Bible. I knew before I saw it. Evan Price. Room 1. Checkout. Blank. Silas moved toward me. The sun touched the horizon. Not enough. Not yet. I wrote "checked out" beside my name. The pen snapped. Silas stopped. The pool wind died. For one perfect moment, everything was silent. Then the ground beneath room 13 caved in. The whole room folded downward into darkness. Walls, bed, lamp, curtains, number plate, all collapsing like a cardboard set dropped into a sinkhole. The office followed. Then room 12. Then room 11. One by one, the motel rooms began to fall inward, not with the sound of wood and brick breaking, but with the soft sigh of something finally exhaling. I ran. The pool fence shook behind me. The drained pool cracked from end to end. Silas stood in the parking lot, facing the sunrise. For the first time, features appeared on his face. Not eyes, not a mouth, just cracks. Light came through them. He lifted one hand toward me, maybe reaching, maybe pointing, maybe trying to check me back in. Then the sun cleared the horizon. Silas burned. No flames, no ash. He simply became too bright to look at, and then he was gone. The Starling Motel collapsed behind him. By the time the sun fully rose, there was almost nothing left. A cracked parking lot, a rusted pool fence, a few broken walls, a dead neon sign lying face down in the dirt. The office was gone. The rooms were gone. The pool was filled in with dry earth, as if it had never been drained at all. My car started on the first try. Of course it did. I drove east until I reached a gas station with service. Then I sat in the parking lot and cried for almost half an hour. I called the county sheriff. They found the old motel ruins exactly where I said they would be. But according to public records, the Starling Motel had burned down in 1991. Calvin Rusk was listed as missing. Rachel Voss was listed as missing. Daniel Whitaker had died in a one-car accident in 1989, less than a mile from the property. There was no record of Silas Vane, no room 13, no pool deaths, no missing child named Emily. The sheriff asked me why I had been out there. I told him my car broke down. He asked where I spent the night. I said, "In my car." That was the version that could be filed. A week later, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a brass room key. Room 1, the staff room. Attached to it was a registration card. Evan Price. Room 1, checked out. At the bottom, in handwriting, I recognized from the Bible margin someone had added, "Thank you for staying with us." I threw the key into a lake. It was back on my kitchen counter the next morning, so now I keep it in a locked drawer. That works most nights. Most nights. Sometimes I wake up at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of keys rattling. Sometimes my phone rings once after midnight and stops. Sometimes when I pass a motel with a red vacancy sign, the letters flicker just long enough to spell staring. And every Thursday, no matter where I am, I smell burnt coffee and hear a polite knock on glass. Tap. The first time it happened, I looked outside. Daniel Whitaker stood under a streetlight in his brown suit. He tipped his hat once, then disappeared. I think he was warning me, because across the street, in the reflection of a dark shop window, I saw the motel sign. Not real, not fully, just a reflection. Starling Motel, vacancy, color TV, cold AC. And beneath it, one new line in red neon. Now, hiring night clerk. I don't know if places like that ever really die. Maybe they just lose their buildings. Maybe they wait in reflections, in dead phone lines, in empty rooms at the end of old highways. Maybe all they need is a desperate person, a broken car, and a sign in the window promising work. So if you're ever driving alone through the Texas Panhandle and your engine dies outside a roadside motel that shouldn't be there, don't go inside. If the owner offers you a room behind the office, refuse. If he gives you a laminated list of rules, don't laugh. And if the sign says Starling, keep driving. If it says staring, don't look back.